Hello all my Kenvians and welcome to episode 8 of Discovering Once Upon a Time. It may, I guess it's probably been a week since the last episode, but I am watching this episode on the same night as the previous one because, like I was saying at the end of the last video, there's no way I could wait that long and not know what happens next. So, let's proceed with Once Upon a Time, episode 8. Desperate Souls. And begin. I don't know why I did that voice. Rumplestiltskin?
Papa! They've come for Moraine.
Before he became the imp or whatever?
The only thing not appropriate is the ceremony. She does not have the power to appoint him. The town charter clearly states the mayor shall appoint a candidate. You can appoint a candidate. It calls for an election. The term candidate is applied loosely. No, it's not. It requires a vote. And guess what, Madam Mayor? And money. Fine. So is Sidney.
I am.
I am. With my full support.
Underestimate someone who's acting for their child.
He's not her child. Not legally.
No, he's trifling with technicalities.
Oh man. Ruby!
There's a snake in this swamp. You need to be careful you get into bed with. I'm not getting into bed with anyone. I'm just fighting fire with.
Oh, dear God!
Alright, come on, let's go. We gotta get out of here. Can't move! You have to get me out! Help me!
There shouldn't be much of a debate there.
I summon thee.
Oh, good God. I should have seen that coming.
Submit. Kiss my butt.
Oh, dang.
Everyone's afraid of Regina. And they're more afraid of me. They're standing up to me. You won them over. It's the only way.
You know how to agree.
Oh, yeah. I know how to recognize a desperate soul.
Okay. Okay, now that, at the very least, that's more of a note that I can leave on. Oh, man. Definitely not as impactful, I think, as the previous episode, but certainly had a lot of very interesting moments. So, alright, so instead of cutting it off here, I am going to let the video continue. I apologize, Lena. And I will sort my thoughts, and I will get back to you shortly. Okay, now that that's over, time to get into the review of this. And, I mean, I gave kind of my basic overall thoughts on this episode there at the end of the reaction. I would not say the episode is overall as impactful as the previous one. Not by a long shot, but at the same time, this episode definitely, it just held my focus so often. Just wanting to find out more about Mr. Goal, to try and concentrate on what was going on. So, in that way, this episode actually had some strengths over the previous one. But, yeah, other than that, it was really good, especially as far as the plot goes. Overall execution, okay, but let's get into my favorite parts of the episode, and like the previous one, there are quite a few. So yeah, let's get into it. Starting with, first of all, and I don't know how often they're actually going to do this. It might be something that's more frequent down the line, but this is the first time it's happened to the best of my knowledge. Or maybe the second time, I can't remember. But essentially they have a new intro for the episode. Or at the very least, the clips that they use are different. So it's almost like the intro sort of evolves as time goes on. So yeah, I mean, that's not something I'll comment on much in the future unless they change the intro in any significant way that just really stands out. But yeah, so I liked the new intro, and I found it intriguing that they did add in some of the stuff, including Graham from the previous episode, which is unfortunate because he's dead now. But moving on from there, my second favorite part of this episode is that we get to see Rumplestiltskin, which, I'm sorry, that's just a weird name. I don't know if it actually ever was a real name for anyone in the history of names. But I do find it strange that that was actually his name before he got imbued with the magic. But, yeah, we got to experience Rumpelstiltskin. We got to see who he was before he was overtaken, essentially. Before he became the Rumpelstiltskin that we have come to know. So yeah, I honestly just really did love that we got to see that. I don't know if there's going to be much more to his story down the line, but I don't know. If my theory is accurate, then maybe there's a reason that we might not see much more of him. But anyway, I'll continue. My next favorite part of this episode, it's, I partially wrote it down, but I'm kind of modified it near the end. Essentially this idea that the two, what would be considered primary villains of this show are enemies. I mean, we kind of saw that earlier, several episodes ago, when we saw that Rumpelstiltskin did in fact still have the power of saying please. And Regina moved away, or let him pass rather. But it's like, it's established here that Gold and Emma have a common enemy in Regina, and Regina and Emma have a common enemy in Mr. Gold. So just the whole what is it, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, or I'm paraphrasing there. I don't think that's exactly the right saying, but something along those lines. So Emma is stuck in the middle, and I'm really interested to see how that goes along with time, because I mean, Regina clearly wasn't very pleased with the outcome of everything, but at the same time, she kind of knows that apparently Emma, well, in her opinion, she thinks that Emma is on Mr. Gold's bad side, whereas really he planned it, I guess. He planned all the crap that went on. I don't know, but I'm getting way off topic here. My next favorite part of this episode is that in seeing Rumpelstiltskin in the past, we find out, because it's clear that at the beginning of the episode, he's very weak. I mean, he's crippled, or they refer to him as lame. And, you know, just like in The Land Without Magic, he has to walk with a cane. So, and in this scene in the forest with his son, it's revealed that he's weak. He's considered a coward by basically everyone in the area. He's the town coward, shall we say. he's crippled, not that that's really... Anyway, that's just one of the things that was pointed out. He's a deserter, which is definitely something that, well, certainly contributes to his reputation as a coward. And at this point, he literally has nothing but his son left. Like, at that point, they have the house, he has his son, who is the only thing that he really cares for in the world. It's clear that at that point, he doesn't really even care for himself. He's wanting to protect his son. And that clearly does change near the end, and hopefully I'll remember to touch on that as I get farther along. But my next favorite part of this episode was the fact that we got a little bit more of Emma's past revealed, in an unfortunate way for Henry and Emma, admittedly, but finding out that Henry was born in jail. And that actually makes me think back to something that, was it Regina? Or was it someone else? I can't remember exactly, but I think it was that Emma spent a fair amount of time in Tallahassee. Was it? It was Tallahassee or somewhere like that. And in talking about that extended time, was the time that she was actually in jail, like that period of time, the period of time in which Henry was born? I don't know. I mean, it's kind of hard to say at that point, but yeah, it was interesting to get that little bit more of a reveal into Emma's past, and hopefully we'll get more of that information as it goes along, possibly whenever we actually get another episode that just solely focuses on Emma. So instead of going to the land with magic, we'll go to Emma's past, hopefully. But okay, moving on from there. My next favorite part of this episode was... it's a combination of when Emma saved Regina from the fire, the clearly planted fire that I basically kind of guessed was set by Mr. Gold. And then shortly thereafter we see the fire that is set at the castle, so that Rumpelstiltskin can get in and steal the dagger. So just I mean, there are definitely parallels there. I mean, completely different situations, but each fire served its own purpose. The fire served as a major distraction as far as the castle goes, apparently completely clearing it out so that Rumpelstiltskin could go in and just steal the dagger with no one around, apparently. And then in the land without magic, or in the real world, we have the fire also serving as a distraction, but for a different purpose. So yeah, I found that comparison rather intriguing overall. Might not mean maybe I'm kind of overthinking that, but again, that's something that I really enjoyed about it. But moving on, my next favorite part of this episode is the fact that Emma openly says and reveals that she's fighting so hard and she's wanting to do that. She's wanting to go through with the debate and try to become sheriff because she wants to show Henry that good can win. Because Henry knows that, you know, bad guys, the evil ones, they will do anything to win, which is pretty well revealed throughout this episode on both sides of Mr. Gold and Regina. But yeah, that being her primary goal, and just showing that even in this land without magic, the real world, that it is possible for the good guys to win. Whereas in the fairy tales, even though the bad guys may not play fair, the good guys win, or at least they usually do. But alright, so yeah, that was awesome. Moving on from there, I think I gotta combine these next two into one, but when Rumpelstiltskin summons the Dark One, Zoso, or whatever it was, and it's revealed that he's the beggar. And that answered my question of how is this beggar, how does this guy know so much about the Dark One and this dagger? And honestly, it should have dawned on me. I did have some thoughts during that conversation that this must be some, some magical being, like someone, but it never dawned on me that it might have been the Dark One himself. So I found that reveal, at least for me, to be honestly surprising overall, and what happened from there is that the magic overtakes Rumpelstiltskin. It was, like, even at first, before we see the full reveal, just the gold, or whatever it is really, just the gold magic dust spreading up his hand, like that was just a moment of sheer tension. Because it's just like it's spreading out from the dagger, which now bears Rumpelstiltskin's name. Yeah, just that was such a great segment, and again, I don't know if this was just the Dark One messing with him, but talking about how his son Bay is like not really his son. Again, I don't know if he was just lying to get under his skin or what. But yeah, that was just that entire scene was absolutely phenomenal. But moving on from there, my next favorite part of this episode, yeah, I guess I'll kind of still include this because I actually did mark part of this as an annoyance. But Archie, specifically at the debate. Yes. Archie at the debate was just so adorably awkward. He even made reference to crickets, made the little reference to, vote by your conscience. And I just really like that. I like the fact that they threw that in there. And I am always a fan of puns, so liked that part. Probably should have removed it overall as far as the debate goes from my favorites, but there you go. But moving on, my next favorite part of the episode is when we find out that Emma is the new sheriff. Yeah, and I honestly thought that they were going to go in a direction of, Emma's going to have to find another job and do something else. Sidney would be the sheriff, which I still think is just such a weird thing to do. Even with Regina being all powerful around there, being the mayor, I just find it strange that a newspaper person is the one they would appoint. But anyway, moving on from there, my next and final favorite part of this episode, which actually does draw a bit of a parallel to Emma being the new sheriff, is Rumpelstiltskin appears as the soldiers are taking his son and reveals himself as the new Dark One. And what that magic brought out in him, part of me wants to say it was a completely different person, but at the same time I don't think that's completely right. I'm going to make the rest of what I was going to say a theory, so I will touch on that shortly. Moving on from there, I did have a couple of annoyances with this episode. Overall, it was a pretty solid episode, but there were a few things that admittedly did bother me, and some annoying kind of logical inconsistencies as far as I'm concerned. The first of which is, there's no explanation of what, if anything, occurred during the 2 weeks since the previous episode. Like, the closest we really get is that Emma has been acting as the sheriff in the deputy role, and Henry has been avoiding Emma to try and keep her safe, because evil wins over good. So, there's that, but at the same time, it's like nothing of significance happened that entire time. From my perspective, it seemed like the episodes had kind of been going day by day, or maybe in the span of an episode, like it might cover a few days, but 2 weeks in between episodes, that just seems so bizarre to me. Like the only time I can really see that happening is if you have either a mid-season finale or a season finale, and then a span of time occurs between those 2 points that you just kind of fill in the blanks with. But again, I just feel like what happened in the last episode was significant enough that it should have been touched on some more in this episode. So yeah, I would say that's personally my biggest annoyance as far as this goes between the two, because that's what, at the end of the previous episode, that's what had me wanting to go next, is like, oh my god, what happens now? But we don't find out what happens now, we find out what happens 2 weeks later. And it's just, it left me wanting more, I guess you would say. Yeah, I guess that's a good way to put it. But okay, my second annoyance with this episode, and definitely the more minor of the two, that wasn't a debate. I mean, unless Emma just walked out before the debate actually started, there was no debate. They gave their statements, and that's it. There was nothing else to that. So, I don't know, it seemed like they could have at least had maybe a mini montage, or they could have had, like, you know, a little bit of a debate, again, you know, maybe covered by montage, and then at the end, we have these closing statements from Sidney and from Emma. That would have worked. But all we get to see is Archie introduces them, they give their statements, and then later Emma's the sheriff. Okay. I don't know what else to say there. So I guess I feel like it's a little bit more significant, but I think it's just, in my mind, that second one is more of an issue than it really is, I guess. Because in the grand scheme of things, it's not that huge of a deal. But okay, if you have any of your own favorite parts of this episode, any of your own annoyances you would like to voice, as always, please do leave them in the comments down below. And now let's move on to my favorite quotes of these episodes. And there's one that is definitely the most significant quote in the entire episode, because it's said twice to great effect, especially the second time. But the first one is when Regina and Mr. Gold are having their little confrontation. Rumplestiltskin refers to Emma as the mother, and Regina says she's not his mother, legally. And and then at that point Mr. Gold says, and now who's trifling with technicalities? I found that line in particular humorous, just because of, again, what had been occurring in their little confrontation previously. But the real quote of this episode, and this is probably very obvious for a lot of people, but I know how to recognize a desperate soul. We get that both from the beggar / Zoso / the previous Dark One, and Mr. Gold, who other than the please comment, clearly at this point still has his memories. If there were any doubts before, this just solidified it. So yeah, that was just a really solid, just absolutely phenomenal quote for me. Now as for, and of course, as always, if you have any of your own quotes you'd like to voice, leave them down in the comments down below, along with your favorites and your annoyances, as always. Yes. But moving on to tracks of the episode, the only one that really stood out to me was, it was fairly short-lived but very tense, And it's in the entire scene with Rumpelstiltskin after he has become the Dark One, and he just lays out the soldiers that have come to take his son. Like, that music just, it was powerful and just perfect for that scene right there. So yeah, as far as tracks go, that's all I got. Moving on though, as far as my questions, I've got quite a few this time. So let's get right into them. First question. What really happened to Rumpy's wife? Well, he told his son that she was dead. But then everyone says that she left him because he was a coward. Because he was a deserter. But then under his breath, he tells his son, or he mutters to his son, that she really is dead. So, what happened to her? Is she going to play any sort of significant role? Is she a character we might want or need to be concerned with in the future of this show? Who knows? But I guess kind of an extension of that is, my theory is, even though he's a coward, maybe he killed her. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me. And he considers him, I mean, he was able to bring himself to kill the Dark One so that he could have the power. So if, again, even if he is a coward and a deserter, if he was more powerful than the wife, who's to say that he didn't overpower her and murder her? Again, just a theory there. But I am intrigued to find out what actually happened, if it's ever revealed, about Rumpy's wife. Moving on, my next question for this episode: does Gold still have any of his magic? Now, he definitely has his cunning. He definitely has his trickery. And he has his memories and his ability to make a killer fire. But is there any remnants of his magic? I feel like because of what we know so far, there has to be just the slightest bit of magic left in him. Because one, the deal was made, and Regina still has to do whatever he says when he says please. And as far as I can tell, that's a magically binding deal. And then with Regina, she still had the huntsman's heart from the previous episode. That's clearly magic. Again, other than just the please thing, does Gold still have any of that magic? Does he have anything else that we don't know about, or at least that I don't know about at this point? Getting into some deep questions here. Moving on, my next question is, quite simply, what will EMAS Favor be? I mean, and it's something that could come up the next episode. It's something that might not come up until, like, the final 3 or 4 episodes of the season. Even from the first time where it was established that she owed him a favor, I was curious what that favor might be. And now, you know, she's, like, pretty solidly in his debt, even though she didn't intend to be. So what will that favor be, and will it be something that she follows through on? Or will she be able to break a deal with Mr. Gold / Rumpy? Yes, I'm calling him that. But okay, those are my questions. Now, as far as a theory goes with this episode, I mean, there's a lot that could be potentially touched upon. But I think the biggest one, I'll hold off for next. The smaller theory that I have that's probably way inaccurate, just because of Mr. Gold and Rumpy's personality. The previous Dark One and Rumpelstiltskin were both, they are able to recognize a desperate soul. What if it reaches a point where Mr. Gold or Rumpelstiltskin is just done? Like, they're done. Like, they say he's won. He wins in the end. And then he's done. Does he have, or trick Emma into killing him? And sort of maybe inadvertently causing her to become the Dark One. I don't know. Probably completely inaccurate and horribly wrong theory there. But it's just a thought that came to mind. But that does bring me to the big theory. And that is that despite the fact that Regina is the evil queen, she's the one that set this curse out. She's the one that murdered the sheriff / Graham / the huntsman. My theory is that in the end, Mr. Gold, Rumpelstiltskin, aka Rumpy, is the true villain of what's going on here. And probably the biggest evidence that I can, or the biggest point I can make for that has to go back to when, the episode when the evil queen found out how to truly set forth the curse. And it's the fact that Rumpelstiltskin gave it to her. He's the one that gave her the curse. He's the one that wrote down all the terms. He's the one that made the deal. So, although Regina's the one that released it, he's the one that was behind it. If not for him, she wouldn't have had that curse. So I really do believe that he is the true big bad here. He definitely has a sad backstory. He was abused, but in the end, I honestly feel like whatever has happened to him, whatever happened to Rumpelstiltskin from the moment he killed the Dark One to the time where it took him over, I think that, well, actually, and this is what I was wanting to touch on earlier, because at first I was thinking that the Dark One, the magical Rumpelstiltskin, was just completely different from, oh wow, this has gone on quite a while, sorry. I might need to split this one into 2 videos. But, that it changed who he was. But I actually think that it might be more accurate to say, especially if my little mini theory about what happened to Rumpy's wife is true, that the magic brought out his true self. Like, that's really who he has been. And it just brought it out in full force, in a force that isn't scared, because he's so powerful. And even at that point, it's like, let's say that the Dark One was telling the truth and that Bay isn't his real son. Well, at that point, the child is his possession. He protected that which is his, as he said at the end of the episode. So, yeah, I'm going to combine that. Mr. Gold / Rumpy is the true villain here. And again, while as a human he was abused, he was hated, the magic brought out his true self. Becoming the Dark One just gave his true self power. So there you go. Yeah, I I do apologize this one has gone on for so long, everyone. I don't know if it'll get edited down any or not, but I do thank you all for joining me for this episode of Discovering Once Upon a Time, and this makes the 8th episode, which means that basically as of this point, the episodes will be starting to go up soon. Meleena has been working on the introduction for the videos. Again, she's the one that does the editing. She's the one sponsoring these videos, so that I'll do reactions and reviews for each individual one. And I'm glad she did. I'm glad that, she wanted me to do this, because at this point in the show, I am definitely ready to move forward. I'm ready to find out, at the very least, what happens to the people of Storybrooke. I'm ready to find out whether or not the memories are returned. I'm ready to find out if I'm right about Rumplestiltskin, and I'm ready to find out if there is any redeeming quality at this point at all for Regina. Of course, I think last episode we kind of crossed a line there that can't be crossed back again. But yeah, okay. Everyone, you're already 8 episodes in, and very soon these episodes will begin airing. And I'm looking forward to the rest of my journey with Once Upon a Time, and I hope you all are looking forward to more as well. So I will see you all next time for True North, whatever that may be, because I got nothing. At this point, I'm just kind of lost. I don't know where they're going to go from here. Maybe they'll jump forward another month or something. But anyway, until next time, everyone, I'm Papa Ken, and I will see you on the next episode.